We've gotten a lot of cracks at the Fantastic Four in movies across the years, with some things being a lot like how the team is portrayed in comics, and a lot of things being completely changed, with no one version fully capturing the essence that made the Fantastic Four such an important and enduring superhero team for decades of continuity. And now here's the newest attempt at bringing the team to life with Fantastic Four First Steps out of the MCU, or technically an alternate universe to the MCU. Will this movie be the first to really get the team right, or did they drop the ball again and are going to disappoint fans of these characters? Well, let's find out by using the cosmically powered 3Cs system to rate every single Marvel hero and villain adapted into this movie, and then rank them all from the least similar to the comic book source material to the most accurate to the characters that they're adapting. For those of you who have no idea what the hell I'm talking about, those 3Cs we'll be using on these characters are costume, character, and continuity. Costume rates a character's outfit or costume, their overall look, and their superficial physical characteristics. Character rates their personality, their relationship with others, and their powers or abilities. And continuity rates their origin story, their iconic moments, and their overall place in the world, universe, or timeline. And by using these scientifically tested systems, we'll be able to see just how well or poorly the characters in this movie were adapted from the comics, answering where this movie rates overall compared to the rich tapestry of previous Fantastic Four films. But, legal disclaimer, a character's placement on this ranking is not a commentary on if they're a good or bad character. It is only how similar or dissimilar they are from the comic book source material in relation to other characters on this list. Alright, so let's stop wasting time and begin our ranking with the Fantastic Four First Steps character, who ranks as the worst adaptation of their comic counterpart in the entire film, at number 18 with Moleman. In the comics, Harvey Elder was a physically off-putting man with very poor skills at interacting with others. He felt shunned from society and set out for a life of isolation, searching for a fabled underground world he believed existed. After finding a mysterious cavern, he had an accident falling deep beneath the surface, but also losing most of his sight due to an injury. But he also found an entire underground world called Subterranea. While exploring the underground world, he encountered its inhabitants, the Moloids. He was able to master the creatures to follow his every command, as well as other much larger monsters he discovered on Monster Isle and found a way to control. With his newfound armies, Moleman struck out at the surface world in revenge for having cast him out before being defeated by the Fantastic Four, but he's returned time and again as an enemy to both the Four and all of the surface. In the movie, we don't learn the detail of his origin, but we can clearly see that he is neither as short or ugly as his comic counterpart, instead just looking like a regular pudgy guy. He does live underground and command an army of Moloids, though they look different than in the comics, being a lot taller and more human-like. He steals a building, collapsing the entirety of it underground, as he has done in comics, though besides believing that the surface world is corrupt, we actually don't get a lot of details about his motivation. Soon after, Sue Storm is able to negotiate peace with Harvey and help him establish the official underground city that they name Subterranea. And though he has ended his war on the surface world from time to time in the comics and opened up his domain as a refuge for the cast out, it's never this official. And while the comic version maintains his dirty, slovenly appearance pretty much all the time, the movie version seems to clean up quite well and acclimate back into society very quickly, working out of an office and dressing relatively normally. Which makes me suspect that his reasons for leaving the surface world are completely different than in the comics. And though the movie version does wear his distinct glasses, he takes them off later in the movie when talking to Sue, showing that he very likely doesn't have the same vision problems as he has in the comics. And while he has an iconic huge colored cape in the comics, in the movie he dresses a lot more casually. And while the comic version dubbed himself Moleman proudly, in the movie it seems like it's a name of disparagement, as when Reed angrily calls him that, Harvey takes offense. However, for being at the very bottom of this ranking, this is already a lot higher than we usually start things off with, or even end things off with sometimes, so let's move on and see how things go. Because next up at 17 we've got Shellabal. This one is for everyone out there who loved saying, Shellabal was a Silver Surfer in the comics, idiots! I'm a real comic nerd because I read an article about it once. Yeah, well, let's see how true that is, as she will only be compared to that specific comic version that she's supposedly based on from Earth X in this ranking, not on Norrin Radd of Earth 616 or any other unfair comparison. Alright, so in the series Earth X and in 616 comics, Shellabal was the love interest of Norrin Radd on their home planet of Zenla. When Norrin Radd sacrificed himself to become the Herald of Galactus to spare Shella and his planet, he is changed and stripped of his humanity, saving her but tragically separating their love. In Earth X, we see an alternate future of the Marvel Universe, where much of the history of the characters is the same, but things have been changed drastically in the modern day. Now, before we go on, I'm going to warn you, Earth X is an amazing comic. It's actually one of my favorites. If you have not read it, I encourage you to go stop this video or skip ahead until you do, because I am going to massively spoil a lot of it right now. You have been warned. You're still here? Come on, man. The spoilers ain't worth it. Get the heck out of here. I'll be here when you're done. It'll only take you like a week to read through it casually. Come on. Alright, they're all gone? Let's go. In Earth X, though many aspects of the universe are the same as the Earth 616 versions, many things are also drastically different. First off, in this universe, Galactus does not consume planets for the same reason as in Earth 616. He specifically targets and consumes planets that have been implanted with celestial embryos, with the populations of those planets having gained powers as a defense mechanism to protect those cosmic embryos. He must consume planets in order to keep the celestial population from growing too large, maintaining a cosmic balance in the universe, as it's always claimed that he does. Both Earth and Zenla have celestial eggs inside. Not knowing this, Reed Richards eventually killed Galactus by draining his energies and turning him into a star. Later on, in order to restore that cosmic balance, Reed's son Franklin Richards is convinced to allow a machine to advance his abilities to the point where his very identity would be shaped by the perceptions of those around him, with the Silver Surfer's perception turning him into a version of Galactus. This version of Galactus, though, is slightly more compassionate, when returning to Zenla to consume it, giving Shellabal and Norrinrad together the power cosmic, so that Norrin can continue his necessary burden, but he can also do so together with the woman who loves him. When the Celestials come to Earth to kill humanity and birth the embryo, Reed calls out to his son to come help stop them. In the course of the battle, though, Shala tragically dies, and afterwards Norrin is so devastated, having lost the only reason he ever made such a sacrifice in the first place, he cannot bring himself to continue and remains on Earth. That is the comic version of Shellabal as a Silver Surfer. In the movie, there is no Norrinrad, and when Galactus comes to consume Zenla, Shellabal is the one who offers herself up as his herald to spare her planet and what looks like her very child, which she does not have in comics either. She comes to Earth and warns them of the coming of Galactus, but when Johnny finds a recording of her planet thanking her for her sacrifice, and also plays recordings of the screams of planets that she's brought Galactus to, she feels guilt and eventually betrays her master. This is not the story from Earth X. This is not Norrinrad's story in the original comics. This is a completely original story created for this movie specifically on what is basically an original character. Which is fine. Plenty of original characters in MCU movies are awesome. We all love Coulson, right? But don't come telling me that she's from the comics, so I'm sexist or whatever for wanting to see a character who actually was from those classic and iconic comics I love used here in this movie instead. The only similarities between this version of Shala and the Earth X version is she's silver, though she looks very different, and she serves a being that looks like Galactus, though her reasons for doing so are not even remotely similar. Honestly, a gender-swapped version of Norrinrad would have ranked higher on this list than the Earth X Shellabal did. Alright, at 16 we've got one of the Fantastic Four's most iconic villains, Puppet Master. Philip Masters discovered a process to mold a special radioactive clay into puppets he could use to control the actions of others. He used this clay for criminal acts, and eventually begins a plan to take out the Fantastic Four so he'll be free to continue his operations. He has a blind stepdaughter named Alicia Masters, who is completely ignorant of his criminality. He uses her in his plans against the Four, but she rebels against him, and she later begins a relationship with Ben Grimm, seeing the man inside of him instead of how he looks on the outside. Feels. He is one of the main recurring foes of the Fantastic Four, having a very specific hatred for the team due to his daughter leaving him to go be with Ben. In the movie, they do not focus on his relationship with his daughter, as she is not in the movie and there is no word of if Ben has ever met her. But they do focus on nothing. He's not in the movie, and we learn nothing about him whatsoever. He's just name-dropped as one of the villains in the city that Reed coordinated the arrest of in order to baby-proof New York in anticipation for the birth of his son. And the police he sends to arrest him must be damn professional, because Puppet Master and some of the other villains that they send him against are incredibly dangerous, which is why it usually takes, the Fantastic Four to stop them. We know he's a criminal of some sort in the city, and we know the Fantastic Four have faced him at one point. The only reason he's lower than the other villains Reed names is because it's very likely his relationship to the team is different due to Alicia not appearing as a part of Ben's life. And the only reasons he's higher than Moleman is because we learn nothing about him. He's portrayed as a villain in the city. Likely if we did see him or learn more about him, something would have changed that would have dropped him down. But for now, we can at least assume that he's remotely similar. Next up to 15, we reach another unseen villain, Diablo. Diablo started out as an alchemist in the 9th century who sold his soul for immortality. Eventually, he is mystically trapped in his castle, but is able to trick the Thing into freeing him in the modern day, with the promise of a potion to turn the Thing back into his human form as a way of controlling him. Eventually, Thing and the rest of the Fantastic Four fought Diablo to stop his plans to conquer the Earth, and he has faced the team many times since. In the movie, it's just another name of a villain Reed found a way to have captured by the police. He's lower than the other villain name because he doesn't usually operate out of the city, usually preferring spookier bases of operations. And I gotta say, what a disappointment to only name drop him. I would have loved to see that costume in live action, even just for a second. Next, we've got the last villain arrested, but not seen at 14 with the Wizard. Wizard is one of my favorites, so I was disappointed to not see him here. Wizard is a genius who made a fortune selling inventions, but whose massive intelligence made life boring for him. To satiate his need for constant attention, he used his great intellect to become a stage magician, making feats of science appear like impossible magics. But when the Fantastic Four arrived on the scene, he became jealous of the attention they were achieving and dedicated himself to proving their superior by defeating them, eventually bringing other villains together in a team to oppose the FF, the Frightful Four. Which is a shame, because when he wants to be, he can be one of their most formidable foes, and all these name drops are telling us that they're probably not really thinking long-term about a sequel. At 13, we come to a villain who was actually sane, but only for a moment, Dr. Doom. Dr. Doom in the comics was a college classmate of Reed's who became horribly deformed in an experiment Reed tried to ward him wouldn't work. He traveled the world, donning a mask covering his disfigured face due to his immense vanity, and eventually returned home to Latveria, conquering it and forcing its citizens to hail him as their savior. He carries a lifelong resentment for Reed, and due to his mastery of both science and magic, he has not only become one of the most dangerous villains of the Fantastic Four, but one of the most dangerous villains in the entire Marvel Universe. In the movie, we know literally nothing about him. We do see an unattended spot for Latveria at a peace conference, letting us know that the country is likely ruled by him and not friendly with the rest of the world, but still just an assumption. But we do not know if his history with Reed is the same, or if they've ever faced him before. We see him in a mid-credits scene kneeling before Franklin Richards with his mask off, allowing the boy to touch his face. Why? We cannot say yet. He's got a large green cloak that is very different than the cape that he's usually wearing, though he has worn similar outfits before, and we don't see it from the front, so we can't judge it. And his mask looks similar to how it does in comics, but we don't get a good look at it. We're sure to learn a lot more about the guy in Avengers Doomsday, though, so we'll have to wait and see if he moves up or, more likely, plummets down. At 12, we have the Mad Thinker. All right, this one pissed me off. The Mad Thinker is a super genius who is able to use probabilities to calculate future events, down to the most minor of occurrences. He used his skills to take over the various gangs of New York, with plans to take over the entire city and eventually the world, using his immense intellect to manipulate events so that the Fantastic Four would disband so that he was free to enact his plans. After taking over the team's headquarters and looking through Reed Richards' notes, the Mad Thinker created the Awesome Android to act as his muscle, and reprogrammed the building's security systems to keep the Fantastic Four out, only able to be defeated because, much to the Thinker's shock, Reed himself had anticipated this outcome at some point and built in a failsafe to turn off the building's security from outside. The movie starts with the Fantastic Four leaping into action with an announcement that the Mad Thinker is attacking the city. And then we don't see him. Not for one damn second. He's just a name they're headed to go fight, and nothing. I was so damn excited to see him for even 1 second, and also excited to get a glimpse of the Awesome Android, but no, screw me. He's higher than the other named but unseen villains because unlike them, the Fantastic Four do actually fight him in this movie, even if I don't get to see it. And at 11 we have Mr. Fantastic. Wow, already? Both versions of Reed Richards are super geniuses who develop an advanced rocket that can travel to space, with his good friend and pilot Ben Grimm flying it, and his love interest Sue Storm and her brother serving as crew. In the comics, Sue is only his girlfriend when they make the trip, while in the movie they are already married. But in both versions, Reed is quite a bit older than Sue is, and in both versions, though their love for each other is strong, it is not without its hardships, with Reed's logic and Sue's emotion often causing difficulties in communication. But when it matters, they always come together with their love overcoming all else. Both versions are affected by cosmic rays and crash back to Earth, gaining the ability to stretch his body at will, and feel immense guilt for the monstrous transformation of Ben, dedicating years to trying to reverse the process. Both versions have gray temples and often keep their hair in classical trim styles, though in the movies he has a mustache. This is quite a difference, since it means that he is a guy who meticulously maintains his appearance, while the comic version either just keeps himself clean-shaven, as it's the quickest, most efficient way to maintain a professional look, or he gets too distracted on a project and just grows a full-on beard. After gaining his powers, he and the others dedicate themselves to helping humanity, both through science and by fighting various threats that emerge, becoming incredibly famous, well-respected figures in the world. Reed and the others wear uniforms that are able to adapt to their unique physiologies due to being made of unstable molecules. And while in the comics their uniforms usually match, not always, but usually, in the movie each of them has minor differences that actually make them look quite unique from each other, with Reed's being the most different from his most well-known comic costumes. While the comic version uses his stretchy powers in all kinds of bizarre and creative ways, in the movie we really only see him stretch his torso and limbs. We don't know the full reach of his powers. And when Galactus is stretching him apart at the end of the movie, he begins to lose elasticity surprisingly early compared to the comic version, who can easily stretch himself the distances that we see in the movie and much longer, though the extent of his abilities will vary drastically from writer to writer. Now, there are a lot of differences, but one of the main similarities between the two characters is the extent of their genius. Both versions are completely obsessed with science, focusing nearly all of their time on it and becoming distracted in casual settings with sudden ideas or realizations about projects he's working on. It can be easy to overlook how smart he is in the movie because we've seen a lot of geniuses in the MCU, but Reed Richards blows them all out of the water. Movie Reed has not only developed space travel in a world that had not really been to space yet, he also soon after developed incredibly advanced faster-than-light space travel beyond anything developed by anyone on the Earth of the MCU. He's able to almost instantaneously calculate the exact trajectory needed to use a black hole to slingshot to return them to Earth, while his wife is going into labor in zero gravity. He develops teleportation technology and then later quickly comes up with a plan to improve that tech to the point where he could not only teleport the entire Earth to another galaxy, but is also able to calculate exactly where to place the planet so that it will maintain the same gravitational orbit as it does in our solar system. And then, when the plan is ended by the destruction of those towers that he built across the Earth, he quickly comes up with a last-second plan to use the last tower to transport Galactus to the other side of the universe instead. And when he puts his mind to it, he's able to come up with a plan to somehow have 4 incredibly dangerous villains in the city arrested all at once in order to keep his son safe when he's going to be born. And he acts almost casual about it. It's not officially stated, but it's heavily implied that most of the advanced technology we see regular people using in this world was developed by him, and he casually referenced that he's discovered that an alternate universe exists. So they may have changed a lot of aspects for him, but the most defining feature, his immense intelligence, was adapted, actually, very well. Though he's less outwardly confident in the movie, often clearly worrying about whatever problems are on his mind, he's still the definitive leader of the team. And while interacting with Galactus, he talks as if they're equals, instead of him being intimidated by his godlike presence, even impressing Galactus a little bit at one point when he almost falls for Reed's trap. He has that main character energy a Marvel hero needs, and I have to admit, I'm very curious how he'll be portrayed alongside other heroes in the MCU when they inevitably meet. Alright, that was a lot of words, but that'll save me some time in repeating myself too much when we get to characters with almost the exact same backstories. Because now entering the top 10 most well-adapted characters in Fantasti Four First Steps, starting with Red Ghost. In the comics, Ivan Kragnov was a Soviet scientist who trained 3 primates to follow his every order. He developed a rocket and flew the apes into space, purposely replicating the Fantastic Four's accident with cosmic rays to give himself and the apes powers. The apes did each gain power, with Ivan gaining the power to become invisible and intangible, and redubbed himself the Red Ghost, becoming a long-time recurring enemy of the Fantastic Four, both for the motherland as well as his own desire for revenge for his many defeats. He was supposed to be in this movie, we even got a second of him in the trailer, but last second they decided to piss me off and cut him out, with him being another unseen villain in this infuriatingly non-visual montage at the beginning of the movie. However, unlike the other villains, we actually do see a version of him in the Fantastic Four cartoon opening after the credits. In it, he looks pretty much exactly like the comics, red coat and everything. We can't say for sure if he actually would have looked like this, but the rest of the team look more or less like they do in real life, so likely it'd be at least somewhat similar. We learned nothing about him though, but he does have 3 trained apes, so that's something. At 9 we got Herby. Herby originated outside of the comics as a replacement for the Human Torch in the Fantastic Four animated series in the 70s, due to the character being tied up in licensing, in which he was a robot created by Mr. Fantastic and a full member of the team. Soon after, a version was introduced into the comics as a robot Reed created to aid him on a mission while in space, created from advanced alien technology, though it was later destroyed. Though later on, we see many different versions of this robot in comics, with there sometimes only being one and sometimes many. Either way, like in the movie, every Herby is an assistant to the Fantastic Four, with versions of Herby assisting in missions and helping to look after Franklin, as we see in this movie. In the comics and show, Herby's face is a screen, while in the movies, it's a tape reel thingy. I'm not a tech guy. Feel free to tell me how stupid I am in the comments. That Reed can remove and replace with different programming functions like home or space. He can float like the comics, but usually prefers to roll around, which the original version doesn't do. And while the Herbys seen in the comics are usually just little nods to the old show, in the movie he's a fully fledged member of the team, accompanying them almost every time they head out, similar to his role in the old cartoon. At 8, we've got one that surprised the hell out of me to even be in the movie, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. While the Silver Surfer is first announcing the coming of Galactus, we see many people staring out of their windows in shock. In a cramped little office covered in comic art with a Timely Comics logo labeled on the wall, we see the backs of 2 men who are clearly Stan Lee and Jack Kirby looking out the window. Their builds and their hair colors matching what they looked like when they were much younger in the 60s-ish era that this movie's based in. Including pencils for a page of Tales of Suspense featuring the monster Oog, and even some Fantastic Four comic pages as well, including a page from Red Ghost's first appearance featuring the Watcher, who sadly isn't in this movie. Now, this isn't their ranking as cameos from the real world. That would be totally stupid. No, this is a ranking of the Marvel Comics characters Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, who existed in universe and created comics based on the real-life exploits of the Fantastic Four. Since there's a Fantastic Four cartoon in this universe, we can assume that these pages on the wall aren't just little Easter eggs, but are likely actual comics published in universe loosely based on the team's exploit. We don't see the front of them, so we can't say how old they are here, but we have one major difference that causes them to be lower on this list, and that's that Timely Comics logo on the wall. Timely Comics was the name of the group of companies that would eventually become known as Marvel Comics years later. And though both men did work under Timely, it wasn't in the capacity they worked closely with each other as they did under Marvel. And while the movie never says what year it has a 60s aesthetic similar to when Fantastic Four were actually being published, while Timely Comics by that point had changed into what we now know as Marvel. Now up to 7 with The Human Torch. In both versions, Johnny Storm is the younger brother of Sue Storm, who accompanies the team on the rocket launch to space, is hit by cosmic rays, and gains the abilities to engulf himself in flame, hurl fireballs, absorb fire, fly, and other abilities. In the comics, he was a teenager when he went into space. In the original comic, Johnny just accompanies the group without much explanation, but in later retcons it was said he was an incredibly gifted pilot for his age and joined to actually help out. In the movies, he's already an adult when they take the mission, and though they don't go into details about his role there, we do see that he's a competent pilot. While all of the Fantastic Four are famous, Johnny's the one that leans into it the most, as we see multiple instances of in universe, with products using him as their spokesman. Both versions are very popular with the ladies, and though we don't see it, Johnny says in the movies that he has a reputation for liking girls. And upon meeting Shellabal, Johnny becomes instantly smitten, describing her as sexy, with his attempted romance for her being very similar to how he usually is when encountering girls across the galaxy and beyond, of many different and sometimes very bizarre types. Both versions have a brotherly friendship/hostility with Ben, often picking on him, but also sharing a close bond as the two are the most combat-heavy members of the team, and so work together very often. In the comics, though he's a good guy, Johnny can also be a thoughtless jerk at times, often going too far with his teasing and actually hurting people's feelings, even after maturing more into the modern day. While in the movie version, he does pick on Ben plenty, but it's more of in a good-natured, annoying kind of way. While his hairstyle is very different than modern versions of Johnny, he usually keeps up with the male styles of the time. It is very similar to the version he had back in the actual earliest comics, matching what a hip kid of the 60s would have worn. Both versions are the first to jump into action, recklessly bursting into flames and flying towards danger without thought of the consequences, as we see him do multiple times with Shellabal, and preferring to fly alongside the Fantastic car instead of riding within it. Both versions are immature, but in the movie, as far as we see, he's a bit less hedonistic than he usually is in comics. Like Reed, Johnny's costume is subtly different from the other members of the team, with white stripes running down his sleeves and a much lower white collar. And though all of their costumes do have similarities to one worn in the comics, they do most often match. And like the comics, he had a difficult upbringing, with a mother who died and a troubled father who became somewhat distant. And despite his somewhat childish outwards personality, both versions are heroic and serious, completely dedicated to their found family, as we see when he's immediately willing to sacrifice his life at the end to save others, as we've seen him sadly do in comics. Up at 6 we have Franklin Richards. In the comics and the movie, Sue initially had trouble getting pregnant due to how the cosmic rays had affected her body, but does eventually get pregnant with and give birth to Franklin Richards. In the comics, Franklin's abilities started manifesting while still in the womb, which eventually weakened Sue, while in the movies the pregnancy goes pretty much normally, even though it's in space. In the comics, Franklin is named after her father, while in the movie they never say this. When she does say that his name is going to be Franklin, Johnny gives her a look that makes me wonder if maybe it's the same. Both versions are incredibly powerful. In the comics, a mutant who is also affected by the cosmic rays affecting his parents, and becoming one of the most powerful beings in all of existence, able to straight up warp reality itself. However, for his own safety and the safety of the universe, his powers are usually suppressed. We have no idea what his exact abilities are in the movie yet, but Galactus claims he has access to the power cosmic, and we see Doom doing something with him at the end, so we'll have to wait and see. Look-wise, I mean, he's a baby. What do you want me to say? Alright, and now we have the top 5 most well-adapted Marvel characters in Fantastic Four First Steps. And I gotta say, for an MCU movie, things are already a lot closer to the comics than we've gotten for quite a while. So, the top 5 will actually matter. And let's start that with Giganto. In the comics, Giganto is a giant monster who was living among the monsters of Monster Isle. He was found by the Moleman and somehow made to serve his goals, rising up from the ground to attack power plants around the world. In the movie, we have no idea what his origins are, or why he's attacking the city, but we see a very quick shot of the Fantastic Four fighting him as he rises from the streets of New York, recreating the iconic cover of Fantastic Four #1. Though in the comics itself, he's attacking a power plant in the desert before later fighting the FF on Monster Isle. We don't know if he's being controlled by the Moleman, and though lots of people are saying he looks straight out of the comics, I mean, kinda, but the shape and build are actually quite different. However, this was the best scene in the movie, and all I wanted out of Mad Thinker and Red Ghost in that opening scene was just this kind of thing. Is that so much to ask for? And now at 4, we come to The Thing. Ben Grimm was a pilot who flies the ship redesigned, becoming one of the first men to travel to space. Him and the others are hit by cosmic rays and transformed, with Ben Grimm gaining a monstrous appearance, taking on the name The Thing. In the comics, Ben had warned Reed against going up into space due to the dangers of those cosmic rays, but was convinced to go. But in the movie, we don't see whether he had those worries or not. Visually, I mean, he looks like the Thing. I mean, things looked a lot of different ways over the years, but this version that we see in the movie is pretty much his most distinct and iconic look. If an artist just drew this in a comic, I would just think it was the Thing. Really, it's honestly probably the closest one-to-one design I've ever seen out of a comic movie, and I can't complain about anything. They even gave him the bright blue eyes. His costume is different than it's usually portrayed, though, while the comic version prefers not to wear a shirt, even ripping it off in frustration when the team first got their costumes. The movie version is fully covered in his costume, with only his head visible. Though we do see in the past that he had gone shirtless, and he looks just like the Thing. Though whether this was an official costume or whether he just popped his shirt off because he was in the water, we don't know. The movie version is a lot less loudmouthed than the comic version, and is more reserved and insightful to those around him. He's well known for a number of weird catchphrases he blurts out in the comics. It's clobbering time and my sweet Aunt Petunia. In the movie, he tells people it's clobbering time, though, is just from the cartoon. Though we don't know if he's telling the truth, and he does yell it at the end of the movie. Both versions are simple kind of guys. Not stupid, but straightforward guys from the streets who prefer to solve problems head on as opposed to talking things out or being patient. Both versions have a sadness inside of them that they cover up. In the movie, we see this when he looks at his past human form on a TV screen and looks down sadly. And we see it in the lack of confidence he has in talking to women who obviously like him, likely due to his worries about being rejected due to his appearance. Though his love interest in the movie is completely made up. It's not Alicia Masters or any of his other famous ones. Though he did date a school teacher for a time before becoming the Thing, it was a different character. Both versions are good friends with Reed, Johnny, and Sue. And as is said in the trailer, but weirdly not in the movie, the rock that grounds the team. And while Johnny picks on him throughout the movie, much to Ben's frustration, he never gets as pissed off as he can get in the comics, sometimes even breaking out into actual fights, though this could just be because Johnny is a lot less cruel. Both versions keep ties to his roots growing up poor on Yancey Street, and we see him wear his distinct fedora and trench coat when traveling around, especially when he wants to maintain a low profile. He's incredibly strong in the movie, able to lift a car and an entire gas truck to throw it at Galactus. We also see him pull an entire ship in a harbor, easily smash through solid concrete, and punch the door off of their crashed space shuttle. One of the major differences is that in the comics, Ben talks with a thick New York accent, often dropping the G's from the end of words. And though we can't hear him in the comics, he's usually described as talking with a gruff voice that matches his working class personality. In the movie, though, he does technically have a New York accent, but it's a lot more subdued, with a voice that's a lot softer and higher pitched than we're used to out of the character. And though he has had a beard in very specific situations in the comic, it's not like it's portrayed in the movie where it just naturally grows. And it makes you have to wonder, do the curtains match the drapes? But he does call Reed Stretch once, so that's a plus. Now entering the top 3, starting with Ptor. Ptor is an orangutan that serves the Red Ghost. In the comics, he has the ability to repel or project metal objects. Whether he does in the movie, we don't know, as we just see him grab Mr. Fantastic and then get kicked into the ocean. However, it's reasonable to assume, he likely does, since just regular trained apes would not be a big enough threat for the Fantastic Four to even warrant considering as one of their villains. Though we see the other apes in animated form, Ptor is the only one that we actually see in this movie. So, underwhelming, and he's only in the movie for a second, but he's an orangutan that serves the Red Ghost and fights the Fantastic Four. There's not a lot to get wrong here. So, top 3. And now at 2, we have Galactus. Galactus is an immensely powerful cosmic entity that travels to planets to drain their energies to fill his unending hunger. He is referred to in the movie and comics as an essential force, providing some necessary but hard to understand universal balance by consuming planets. In the comics, he predates the universe, being the last surviving member of the universe before this one, as it died and was reborn. And from dialogue in the movie, we know that Reed took samples from the ship that predate the universe, and Galactus himself says that he originated from another existence. In the comics, he has had a variety of gargantuan ships, and in the movie, we see him riding in one. Both versions come to the planet Zenla and made a deal with one of its citizens to spare the planet in return for their services as his herald, granting them a portion of the power cosmic to serve as the Silver Surfer. Though in the comics this was Norrin Red, while in the movie it was Shellabal. We don't see the details of how he consumes planets in the movie. In the comics, though, he has the ability to break them down into energy that he can consume on his own. He often prefers to build a machine on one of the planets that will more efficiently harvest those energies, with less of it lost in the process. In the movie, though, all we see is that his ship drives right through a planet. Then, inside of it, we see it breaking down pieces of the planet and that he is hooked up to tubes that assumedly feed those energies from his ship into him. Whether he needs this to do this, or whether he just uses it to make it easier like in the comics, we don't know. In the movie, he does talk directly to the team when they board the ship. It is only to strike a bargain with them for their unborn child. When he visits Earth at the end, he barely acknowledges their presence, even as they do everything that they can to attack him. Both versions thinking of the life upon the planets he consumes as we would think of insects beneath our feet, with him saying as much in the movie. And when he does talk, it is with an emotionless, godlike way, talking out at people rather than to them. Though he does acknowledge Reed's genius when he notices of a device that they're trying to use to trap him. As in the comics, Reed is one of the very few people that Galactus even has the slightest amount of regard for. And not only is he not a friggin' cloud, besides his outfit being a little darker and having more texture, he looks pretty much straight out of the comics, down to the shape of his helmet, chest piece, gloves, boots, and even his facial expression, which remains stoic and unreadable most of the time, even when he's being hurled into a portal at the end of the movie, having lived so long and seen so much that there's very little that can even shake him. As said before, there are stories that explore the concept of who will take over Galactus, with Franklin being a candidate, but it's much different than how it's portrayed in this movie. One major difference, though, is that he's portrayed a lot less powerfully within this movie. In the comics, it's pretty inconsistent what his power level is, but it usually wavers from either nigh godlike to simply unfathomably powerful. In most comic stories, it would take a great deal more effort to defeat him, and even transporting him into that other side of the universe, as they do, would not get rid of him for millions of years, as Reed says it will. But who knows, maybe he just popped back to Earth a week later. And now, at the number 1 most well-adapted Fantastic Four First Steps character, we have the Invisible Woman. Susan Storm Richards is the older sister of Johnny and the wife of Reed Richards. I've basically said this 4 times now, but in the comics and movie, Sue Storm is one of the members of the crew who take Reed's ship up into space and are hit by cosmic rays, gaining powers. With Sue gaining the ability to turn invisible, and later on she learns that she can also control powerful force fields. In the comics, she was Reed's girlfriend when they went up, but did later marry him. In the movie, though, they were already married. In the comics, she did not have a lot of reason to go up into the rocket ship, and it was an unsanctioned launch. While in the movie, she has specialties that will allow her to be useful up there, and it was sanctioned. With their new powers, the Four dedicated themselves towards helping humanity as the Fantastic Four, becoming beloved and famous heroes to the entire planet. Of the 4, Sue has the most accurate costume, with the colors and cut being much closer to their standard outfits when they have the white trim like that. Both versions are the glue that hold the team together, as all 3 members love her in different ways, and she knows how to talk with each of them individually, and is the bridge between Reed's colder logic and Ben's and Johnny's more emotional personalities. While the other 3, even Reed, are usually quick to resort to combat, Sue is the one most likely to empathize with and try to talk with villains, often being more compassionate and understanding about where they're coming from, as we see with characters like Namor in the comics, or how she's the only one who Moleman will talk to with respect in the movie. Though you piss her off, and she will go ham on you. She's not as much of an official diplomat as she's portrayed in the movie, but this is an aspect of her personality that is explored from time to time. While she loves Reed deeply, his tendency to become distracted by science and his many projects can become frustrating to her, something she will often tell him right to his face. And unlike him, she is far more emotional, something he can have trouble understanding, but something that helps keep him grounded in reality instead of disappearing off into his own mind. The version we see of Sue in the movie is similar to the more modern, confident, and a little smarter version of Sue, able to fill aspects of the leadership role in the team when needed, but perfectly trusting and comfortable to follow Reed's orders when he takes charge of the group. In a speech she gives, we learn that in the comics her mother died while she and Johnny were young, and that her father had difficulties while raising them, as he did in the comics. Both versions had trouble getting pregnant initially, but were eventually able to, giving birth to Franklin Richards in a troubled situation. And both versions are fiercely protective of both her son and the rest of her family, willing to go as far as needed to protect them, and both the comics and movies willing to push her abilities to their absolute limits, at the expense of her own well-being. The strength of her force fields in both versions are incredible, able to withstand even the blasts of cosmic beings like the Silver Surfer or even Galactus, and the incredible gravitational force of a black hole. Though initially only able to turn invisible, Sue Storm is often considered the most powerful of the entire team when she wants to be nowadays. Though moving Galactus at the end for such a long period of time as she does is still a bit much. Though, it's hard to really judge how strong of a feat this actually was because we never get a sense of how powerful Galactus actually is in the movie version. And in comics, it's pretty standard that if you're willing to do something to death, you can pretty much achieve any feat of strength. One of the only real major differences, though, is her hair color, which is much less vibrant than the blonde hair is usually portrayed in the comics, having a much more natural color to it. Hey, and judging by the fact that the actress will not stop talking about how much she loves the Malice persona and the popularity that costume's gained due to rivals recently, there's a more than 0% chance that we will see something that crazy in a future movie as well. So there we go. After looking through the characters in this movie, though there are some aspects that the previous movies did a lot more accurately, specifically in some of the elements of the personalities, I'd say this movie is a lot more like the comics than I expected going in, especially out of an MCU movie, and especially out of a recent MCU movie, which just makes crap up. I think it'll be really interesting to see how some of these characters are portrayed in a future movie, especially when interacting with characters from a much more modern version of Earth. But what do you think? Do you appreciate the similarities in this movie, or did those differences put you off too much to even give them credit for what they did right? Do you think any of these characters have the chance of becoming even more similar to the comics in the future, or do you expect them to just take them off in a completely original direction? And most importantly, are you as annoyed as I am at being denied Red Ghost and Mad Thinker, or do you think we dodged a bullet because they would have just screwed them up anyways, and now they can exist in our minds is absolutely perfect? If you want more rankings of Marvel, DC, and beyond, you can click that playlist over there. If you enjoy this kind of thing, hit that subscribe, bell, and like button to let YouTube know it. Now that Fantastic Four's out, we got a while without any huge superhero releases coming up, but that just frees me up to make videos about other stuff. Let me know what old or new show, movie, comic, or whatever you want to see content out of me from below, and I'll start working on some, hopefully interesting stuff for you soon. Anyways, this video's long enough, so toodles! With Jack Kirby art, including pencils for a page of Tales of Suspense, god damn it.